Jon Jones just did an interview with Kevin Iole where he was directly asked about a future fight with Tom Aspinall, the unification of the heavyweight titles. And unfortunately, Jon Jones confirmed our suspicions. He has no intentions on unifying the belts with Tom Aspinall, even with a win against Stipe Miocic at UFC 309. We're going to take a look at the interview in a second because Jon Jones kind of craps on Tom Aspinall as well, which I think is going to have a lot of people up in arms. But I kind of understand to a certain extent what Jon Jones is saying. But at the end of the day, I'm just disappointed, guys. I wish he would have just left a breadcrumb. Like, oh, maybe we'll see how I feel on Saturday night. You know, to pull a quote from Max Holloway. We'll find out. We'll find out on November 16th. I think that's the date for the pay-per-view. We're going to find out November 16th. Depends how I feel. Depends how the fight goes down. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. Just a breadcrumb. But now instead, he's like, oh, no, I'm not going to. I mean, anything other than basically flat out refusing to fight Tom Aspinall would have been fine. It would have been suffice. It could have gave me a little bit of hope when I'm watching UFC 309. Oh, hopefully the winner of this fight fights Tom Aspinall. Unfortunately, that's not the case. And also, this just further tells me that unless Jon Jones is really trying to negotiate here with Dana White in the UFC, then Dana White's been selling us wolf tickets. Because Dana White's been trying to convince us, oh, I think the winner of Jon Jones, Stipe Miocic, will fight Tom Aspinall. Stipe has no intentions. If you watched my video from yesterday about UFC 309, you would know that Stipe has no intentions on fighting anyone but Jon Jones. That's it. That's why he's been inactive for 3.5 years. That's why he doesn't have a win in 4 years. Because he only wanted to fight Jon Jones. And if he beats Jon Jones, he's going to retire. Or potentially rematch Jon Jones, which is even crazier. And in this interview, I haven't even mentioned it yet, Jon Jones kind of throws a call out for Alex Pereira. Basically, if I am to fight again, I will fight Alex Pereira. And we'll hear that directly from Jon Jones here in a second. Now, before we jump into this interview, I want you guys to do me a favor. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications. But I also want you to do me another favor. I will link the full interview down in the description. Do me a favor. Go check it out. Watch it in its entirety. Subscribe to Kevin Iole's channel. Give it a like and comment. All that good stuff. Because he asked the good questions here. He confronted Jon Jones with Tom Aspinall's name. That takes a lot of, that's a bold move by a reporter nowadays. So the first question we're going to look at is Kevin Iole asking him, look, why does Stipe deserve this title shot? Stipe's been inactive for 4 years, or inactive for 3.5 years, hasn't won a fight in 4 years. His last fight's a loss. Why does he deserve a title shot? And the reason I want to play this is because this is also part of the reason that Jon Jones wants to fight Stipe. And I feel like a lot of newer fans, if you haven't been watching the sport for the last, 10, 15 years, you only started watching in the last 5 years, some of you may not even know who Stipe Miocic is other than a firefighter. And I think Jon Jones kind of explains why he truly wants to fight Stipe here, even though I think it's fundamentally flawed because of the inactivity of Stipe Miocic. It doesn't matter anymore, but we'll break it down as we go. Let's jump right into the interview.
Now compete in?
Yeah, I feel that it's unfortunate that we live in a world where one bad performance discredits a person so much. Stipe has beat everyone. I mean, Junior Dos Santos, Francis Ngannou, Daniel Cormier, some of the biggest names, many champions he's defeated. And I feel like I'm wise enough to know that one bad night doesn't make a man or break a man. And Stipe is every bit of worthy as my opponent. It's not easy winning championships back-to-back, especially in the heavyweight division. And what he does.
Let me explain to you guys this. Everything that Jon Jones just said, I would 100% agree with if it was 2 years ago, if it was 3 years ago. Stipe getting a title shot, you can justify it on his resume alone. Oh, he got caught and got KO'd against Francis Ngannou. So what? Look at his resume. He's one of the greatest heavyweights of all time, the greatest heavyweight of all time. But what throws that argument out the window is the fact that he's been sitting on the sidelines for 3.5 years. Stipe hasn't fought since March of 2021. Stipe hasn't gotten a win since August of 2020. I don't care what his resume is at this point. That's like justifying a lightweight title shot for Tony Ferguson. Oh, well, he did this in 2015. He did this in 2016. He went on this 12-fight unbeaten streak, a 13-fight unbeaten streak. I don't even remember what it is at this point because he's lost so many fights. You can't do it. You can't go into a time machine to justify a title shot. And I understand why Jones wants to fight him. He believes this is a legacy fight. But to be honest, I think it kind of tarnished Jones's legacy, even though I don't think it should. If anything, the drug failures should do that. But to want to fight Stipe after he sat out for so long coming off a loss, it just makes you look bad, especially when you have an interim champion in Tom Aspinall who's KOing everyone in the first round. So it's just disappointing. We're going to jump right into the part where now he's asked specifically about Tom Aspinall. Great question by Kevin Iole. Listen to this.
And that's the plan.
Tom Aspinall's the guy that people want to see you fight, right? So here's the question. You're fighting Stipe Miocic, and I know you're focused on that fight. If you defeat him, as you're a 6-1 favorite to win the fight, if you defeat him, will you defend your belt against Aspinall, who has the interim title?
More than likely not.
Does that not just throw cold water all over 309? Why wouldn't he just hint at a maybe? We'll see. We'll find out. I'm not sure. I haven't decided yet. More than likely not. Good on Kevin Iole for asking these questions. By the way, guys, again, go check out the full video. I encourage you to. But more than likely not. And I already knew as soon as he said this, Jon Jones is ducking Tom Aspinall is going to be the main narrative coming out of this. And I completely understand. But then he took it a step further and started, I don't want to say trashing Tom Aspinall, but he's saying some things that I think are slightly exaggerated, but also partially true when discussing Tom Aspinall. And Kevin Iole realizes it immediately. As soon as Jon Jones starts going on this little tangent, Kevin Iole's eyes get big and he's like, oh, I know this. Everyone's going to, latch onto this clip. Watch this.
I feel like Tom Aspinall is, I don't want to say nobody, but he just hasn't proven anything. He hasn't done anything. And
Look, Kevin Iole's like, I got my viral moment. He just asked a basic question. Are you going to defend your belt against Tom Aspinall? And he hears Jon Jones go, he hasn't really done anything. I don't want to call him a nobody, but he hasn't really done anything. And Kevin Iole knows immediately. And I know a lot of people are going to get upset at this. And rightfully so. I understand. I think what Jon Jones is trying to say here, though, is the heavyweight division is just garbage. But to say I think this is a horrible approach by Jon Jones. To say Tom Aspinall hasn't done anything is just crazy. And I've gone on the record saying I think Tom Aspinall is one of the most overhyped fighters on the entire roster right now. A month ago, I was screaming from the rooftops, Tom Aspinall, most overrated fighter on the roster. Khamzat Chimaev, most underrated fighter on the roster. Now, that doesn't mean he sucks. Some people take that as, oh, you're saying he's overrated, that sucks. But no, Tom Aspinall is worthy of a title shot. Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall is the only fight I want in the heavyweight division with fighters that are still in the roster. For Jon Jones to say he's a nobody, he has some good solid wins. Curtis Blaydes and Sergey Pavlovich, both via KO. He has that win a while ago against Alexander Volkov, which we'll get to more in a second. I understand that Tom Aspinall doesn't have the resume of a Jon Jones, but Tom Aspinall has done well in a shitty heavyweight division. Let's get back to the interview and listen to some more because I know he's about to tick a whole lot of people off.
And I understand that. I mean, he won his belt against Sergey. Sergey just got slaughtered by someone else. So it's just like.
Sergey. So Tom Aspinall did win the belt against Sergey Pavlovich. Had Pavlovich won that fight, they'd be saying all the stuff they're saying about Tom Aspinall about Pavlovich versus Jones. But who did Pavlovich get slaughtered by? Who else? Who did he get slaughtered by? Alexander Volkov, who Tom Aspinall also already beat. Tom Aspinall has beaten the majority of UFC heavyweights in the top 10. I mean, just off the top of my head, I know I had the resume on my screen right there. But he beat Alexander Volkov, he beat Pavlovich, he beat Blaydes. I believe he beat Spivak, he beat Tybura. I don't think he's ever fought Rosenstruck. And I'm trying to remember. I don't think he's fought any of these guys. Maybe he fought Tai Tuivasa at some point. I don't know. I'm not looking at it. I think he might have fought him at one point. No, he did not. So he's beat a lot of these heavyweights, but I understand what Jones is saying in that he doesn't have the resume of a Stipe Miocic. I understand what he's saying, but this is just a bad look. What Jones should say is, look, I want to fight Stipe because he's a legacy fight. Stipe is considered the greatest heavyweight of all time. Tom Aspinall is trying to make a name for himself, And I just don't know if I'm going to be willing to fight anymore. That's it. He can make his own legacy. He doesn't need to try to build his name off of me. The UFC could use him after I'm gone. That's what he should say, but instead he's trying to demean his resume. But I understand what he's trying to say and saying that he hasn't really done much. Because at the end of the day, the heavyweight division is shit, so building a really solid resume is very, very hard. But he has one of the best resumes at heavyweight right now.
I'm not here to gamble someone else making a name off of me. I'm here to compete against the guys where when we look back, 10 years from now, it'd be like Jon Jones fought this guy and that guy and this legend and this champion and this champion.
He already has that. I don't know what, framing it like that just looks horrible. I mean, everyone's going to be screaming, duck, 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 duck. I'm not here to gamble. I understand what he's getting at here. It's just a horrible look. But, I really do believe that fighting Stipe Miocic at this juncture in Stipe's career doesn't do that much. And I understand a lot of new fans don't understand how good Stipe was. But that's was. We don't know how good he is anymore because he's been sitting out for 4 years. So it's just a bad look on Jones here. But I am going to take a side a little bit here in a second.
There were to be a fight of a guy that's still on our UFC roster that would be not only financially worth it, but legacy worth it. It would be Alex Pereira. Alex Pereira and I, we both 37.
Light heavyweight champ.
Yeah, we're both 37 years old. Right now, I weigh about 235. I'm an incredibly light heavyweight. I think Pereira walks around at 240. And I think that fight would go much farther on my legacy than a young man who's cool today and maybe gone tomorrow.
Let me explain to you what Jon Jones is saying here, because I do partly understand what he's saying. So first off, Alex Pereira, the UFC would leap at the opportunity to make Jon Jones versus Alex Pereira. And let me tell you guys this right now. They would do it for the undisputed heavyweight title. So you know what that means? That means Tom Aspinall is going to have to sit on the sidelines longer or defend his interim belt, which is absolutely embarrassing, which is a reason why the UFC should have never gave out the interim belt to begin with. But Jones slaughters Alex Pereira. But to be honest, Alex Pereira probably does do more for his resume. Because what Jon Jones knows, and if you've been watching the UFC for long enough, heavyweight champions don't last. And I think that's part of the reason he says gamble it, for someone else to make a name off of me. Because if you look at the history of the heavyweight division, we'll just go back through the last couple champions. Ngannou, 0 title defenses. He did leave the UFC, so it doesn't really, you really can't count it too much. Stipe Miocic, he's a 2-time heavyweight champion, 4 title defenses. That is astounding for the heavyweight division. Werdum, the previous champion before him, Fabricio Werdum, 0 title defenses. Cain Velasquez, the previous heavyweight champion before him, he was a 2-time heavyweight champion. He had 2 title defenses. So it's unheard of to get a lot of heavyweight title defenses. So Tom Aspinall is hot right now. In a year from now, I don't necessarily see this. He could be yesterday's news. And Jon Jones wants to fight guys who are already established. He doesn't want to risk it against a guy who in the future may not be looked at as one of the greatest. He doesn't want to have that blemish on his resume potentially, which it doesn't look great to be saying that out loud. I don't think Jon Jones is scared of Tom Aspinall. I just think he thinks I have a lot to risk by fighting Tom Aspinall and very little to gain. I fundamentally disagree with it because I think beating Tom Aspinall and shutting up all the naysayers would do a lot for his legacy, and I actually think he would beat Tom Aspinall. But to go about it and say like, oh, he hasn't done anything and he hasn't beaten anyone, I think is going to rile a lot of people up. But I do understand partially where he's coming from here. And there's more.
I remember a time when the whole world thought Johnny Walker was going to be the guy to beat me. And no disrespect for Johnny Walker, but I mean, we all have seen the way his career has played out. I've just been here too long to get all excited about someone who's hot today. I'm here for legacy. I've been gambling for way too long to just take random fights.
Tom Aspinall's not a random fight. But again, I understand what he's saying. He's been here for too long. He's only here for legacy at this point. He's already got so many paychecks. And people crap on Jon Jones's resume. And I understand that's why Dana White gets so fired up nowadays, because people are crapping on Jon Jones's legacy and resume when it's absolutely insane. He went out there, demolished Cyril Gane. Okay, the Dominic Reyes fight was competitive. It's not a good look, but he ultimately won. It was a razor close fight. Fight before that, split decision against Thiago Santos. Didn't look great. Fight before that, dominated Anthony Smith. Fight before that, dominated Alexander Gustafsson and stopped him. Fight before that, KO'd Daniel Cormier and ultimately got overturned to a no contest. Fight before that, beat up OSP. Fight before that, dominated Daniel Cormier. Fight before that, dominated Glover Teixeira. Fight before that, beat Gustafsson in a wild, crazy fight at UFC 165. I'll never forget it. One of the greatest light heavyweight fights of all time. Beat up Chael, beat up TRT Vitor, beat up Rashad, beat up Lyoto, beat up Quentin Jackson, beat up Mauricio Shogun Rua. And I understand a lot of casuals go back. They weren't watching the sport then, and they don't realize how legendary this run is. Just like I don't understand like BJ Penn's run back in the day, and that's why I never speak to it. But people act like Shogun Rua's not a good win, or Quentin Rampage Jackson's not a good win, or Lyoto Machida's not a good win, or Rashad Evans aren't a good win. At the time, these were the best of the best, and every single time it was, oh, this next guy's going to be the one to beat him. This next guy's going to be the one to beat him. And then at one point, Johnny Walker had a lot of hype. People were saying Johnny Walker's the guy to beat Jon Jones. He didn't make that up. And what he thinks is Tom Aspinall right now is that guy. Tom Aspinall is the next guy. And eventually Tom Aspinall is going to lose like everyone does in the heavyweight division. And so he'd rather not risk it for very little gain, but it just comes off looking horrible. It really does come off looking horrible. Essentially, I don't want to gamble a loss against Tom Aspinall because I might lose, and who knows what Tom Aspinall's legacy is going to be when he's all said and done in the UFC heavyweight division. That's what Jon Jones is saying, and I just really don't think it's a good look for him. But ultimately, I do understand what he's saying. But what he should say is, look, I'm focused on Stipe Miocic. It's a legacy fight for me. It's a fight we had planned. I'm going to fight that fight, and then I'm going to see how I feel. But there is a chance that I retire. I've been thinking about this for a while. I want that Stipe fight, and then I may ride off into the sunset. And Tom Aspinall can build his own legacy. He's been doing well right now. But what I do think Jon Jones does is I think Jon Jones retires for a little while. I think he'll come back and fight someone in like 2 years. MMA retirements don't last. And what it would not shock me is Tom Aspinall loses to somebody next year. Jon Jones comes back and beats the guy that Tom Aspinall loses to. He's that petty. Because if you followed his career, every time he's fought someone that somebody says, oh, this guy's going to wrestle him, Jon Jones goes out there and wrestles him. This guy's going to, clinch with him and beat him up in the clinch. Jon Jones goes out and clinches with him. This guy's going to knock him out on the feet. Jon Jones goes out and strikes with him. That's what Jon Jones has done his entire career. And he always fights to the level of his perceived level of his opposition. And that's why sometimes with those fights against like Dominic Reyes or Gustafsson the first time, Jon Jones has underperformed because he hasn't taken them seriously. But let me know what you guys think about this interview down in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and thank you so much for watching.